Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have the latest from the live radar, run through the latest UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperatures over the next 5 days, as we are seeing cold easterly winds arriving by the end of the week as we do start to pull in some really chilly air off the near continent. The main focus will be on the colder temperatures, widespread overnight frost and a very strong wind chill, especially towards eastern portions of the country. But we're also going to see the risk of some snow as well. Not expecting anything too major at this stage, but especially in the south and the east we are likely to see some convection Friday, Saturday, maybe even Sunday, with a few snow showers around. So that does look like a real possibility. It has increased quite a bit in the last 24 hours. I'm suspecting a few more alterations as we get nearer to the end of the week. But need to keep close eyes on the flow if we see any disturbances or things like that popping up. As we enter the longer range, we continue to see that high pressure dominating to the north and the east and keeping those easterly winds pushing in. But eventually, that cold air mass to our east does run out. We're not tapping into proper Arctic air yet. That could be a possibility around the middle of the month. We are seeing a bit of a model wobble in regards to that cold air mass heading our way. A lot of runs today. By the time the very cold Arctic air starts to push into Western Europe, the high pressure breaks down, or at least positions itself so that we don't tap into that very cold air. So there is a little bit of wobbling in that longer range, but all sort of options are still on the table. And generally the next week, regardless of if very cold air does arrive, does look chilly and does look wintry in places. So do remember, if you enjoy the videos, do like and subscribe. And remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now, if you start on the live radar, we still have a westerly flow pushing in at the moment, but you can see high pressure is building in firmly in the south, where we've got a small lingering weather front that's getting squeezed away. That did bring some heavier rain last night in the west, but it's almost amounting to nothing as it clears through the east. Some more showers in the north, and some of these turning to snow over the higher ground. Again, not too unusual for early February, and this is because there is a cold polar maritime air mass associated with the northern edge of this high pressure system, but that's not the cold air that's going to be arriving through the end of this week. That air is sat currently out towards Germany and Poland. If you do put on the temperatures this evening, you can see it is coldest in the north at the moment with that chilly polar maritime air. Further southwards, it still feels cold, but the actual surface temperatures are a couple of degrees above freezing and probably will drop down to 1 or 2 tonight, but nothing, ridiculously low. It's the cold air out to our east that we're going to be tapping into later this week. You see these lighter blues indicating temperatures below freezing, very dry air as well, so it is going to make it feel even colder. Now you may be saying, we're getting easterly winds, why is it not very cold? And that's because the very cold air is out to our north and out to our far, far east, not across Central or even Eastern Europe. So it means once that easterly starts firing, we're not tapping into this exceptionally cold air. If we did tap into this exceptionally cold air, then we would be seeing heavy snow, widespread wind chilliness, very cold conditions. But at the moment, much of Central and Eastern Europe isn't that cold. It's chilly, but not that cold. And that's why this easterly isn't going to be anything too spectacular, at least initially. What we need to keep a close eye out for is all of this very cold air moving into Eastern and Central Europe, perhaps early to mid next week. And if that does occur, then the potential floodgates do open as we head towards the middle of the month. But at the moment, we're still seeing a lot of uncertainty with those prospects. Now, if you go over to the latest UKV now, if you quickly refresh this and put on the 3 p.m. run, you can see precipitation clearing away to our southeast at the moment, and some heavier showers in the north turning to snow across the higher ground, but really not amounting to much as we head into Wednesday. Generally pretty dry, but interestingly the air mass starts to cool and the wind direction starts to slowly shift. The winds die out during the afternoon into the evening and then start to turn in from the east come Thursday. And that's because the high pressure transitions across southern England to Scotland and eventually clears to our north, unlocking easterly winds. You start to see that easterly flow starting to push into the far southeast through Thursday, and then it really gets going as we head into Friday. This is where you start to see thicker clouds and the risk of some showers pushing in. Now at the moment you can see there's a bit of a wintry mix, some rain and some snow within these showers, but I'm expecting them to be more predominantly snow as we get further inland and get nearer to the event, and that is because these air masses tend to cool down as we get nearer to the air mass actually moving in. So I suspect more of this will fall as snow, but you can see much enhanced precipitation risk compared to even yesterday. Just shows you how the updates are changing very, very quickly when we see these upper troughs developing, these cold air masses moving in, and even some more enhanced precipitation there through Saturday. Again, showing rain at the moment, but I suspect more of this will be snow as we get nearer to the time. It slowly clears further inland, bringing more heavier precipitation as it does. It is going to be slightly marginal, and the reason for that is the dew points could rise at times. But you can see generally through Friday and even into Saturday, the dew points are hovering close to freezing. There's just a slightly milder push of dew points there, but I suspect again that could cool down as we do get closer to the event, as that air mass does intensify. You could also see the upper air temperatures turn very cold Friday into Saturday, but turn temporarily milder through Saturday into Sunday, and that's because there's a slight nudge of slightly milder air getting wrapped in within it, enhancing the precipitation, but could turn it back to rain for a time. So we'll have to wait and see, but definitely looks like a lot of cold air will be pushed in. It just all depends on its positioning, the exact wind direction and intensities of air masses as we head towards the weekend. Still things that I'm expecting to see some quite big alterations for. Regardless though, we are expecting it to be cold, if not very cold, in places. The risk of widespread overnight frosts and some snow. Look at the temperatures into Wednesday. You can see into the morning, frost developing in a few spots, but mostly 2 to 4 degrees, slightly above freezing. Into the afternoon, a chilly day, 5 to 9 degrees, hovering around average really, but with that wind starting to move in from the east and the far south, it starts to make it feel colder. Into Thursday, more of a widespread frost. Temperatures down to 0 to -3 degrees, really cold. And then into Thursday, look at that, 4 to 7 degrees, so starting to cool down already, but it's really into Friday, overnight frost, and by the afternoon, temperatures struggling to get much above 2 to 5 degrees, so much, much colder, and you see pretty much in the morning, hardly around freezing, lunchtime, it gets a couple of degrees above freezing, by the evening, drops down towards freezing very, very quickly. Into Saturday, similar conditions, kind of 2 to maybe 6 degrees if that milder pulse pushes in. And you can see the same into Sunday, again, perhaps at best 5-6 degrees, but I suspect again these temperatures will slowly lower as we get nearer to the event. As I said, these air masses, especially at the surface, do tend to cool down. These high resolution models can, at this sort of 3 or 4 day time frame, can sometimes underdo how quickly these air masses cool down across the near continent. We've seen it numerous times, even in the past couple of years, with these air masses. It just really intensified nearer the time. So I wouldn't be surprised if this did get even colder. But we'll wait and see, of course. All eyes need to be on that precipitation, know what happens with that, and of course its typing. Now, if you look at the latest GFS, as I said, a bit of wobbling in the longer term. We're still very confident on easterly winds into next week, and you can see that here, those easterly winds pushing in, perhaps some slightly milder air masses mixing in, but generally easterly winds continue. But the air mass, as I said, could slightly warm up. If we look at those upper air temperatures, it's still cold come Monday, but some more of these yellows moving in. It'll still be very chilly at the surface. It's a continental airflow. It's still cold, but it's not as cold as it was in the prior days, or as cold we'd expect from an easterly. You can look out to our east, and there's not actually that much cold air. There is some blues, it's chilly, but it's the northeast towards Scandinavia, out towards Russia. It's orange, which indicates not a lot of cold air is getting dragged in. It's because the positioning of the high is meaning this cold air's got a very long way to go to get pulled in from the east. Now, if we do follow on this GFS, you can see eventually some very cold air starts to make its way into Eastern Europe, and it starts to head towards Western Europe. Look at this, a massive pool of very cold air. But at 384 hours, that big block to our northeast has started to disintegrate away, And instead, we have a southerly track jet stream, low pressure system starting to push in, so it'll be cold and unsettled, but that very cold air never fully pushes in. And it's all because the positioning of this high means this very cold air has got such a long way, which takes a very long time to move around. Now, if this high was slightly further westwards, slightly smaller even, and maybe perhaps a bit further northwards, it would force this cold air much, much faster. Now, some runs still do that, but this is the wobble we're seeing with the highs almost too strong and too stable towards Scandinavia to let the very cold air move in. So it would remain chilly out towards the middle of the month. It just wouldn't go very cold, wouldn't pull in proper wintry, bitterly cold easterlies. It would just be a cold easterly, chilly at the surface, frost, fog, maybe a bit of snow would be the worst sort of disruption we would see. So I need to keep a very close eye, all dependent on the positioning of this high, but the latest update in the last 24 hours has sort of seen it stay more where it is and mean this very cold air has a very long way to go before it pushes into Western Europe. And by the time it does that, the high is starting to break down. Now, if you look at the latest GM, it's very similar over the coming days. The easterly wind builds in, very cold, as we head towards the weekend. Eventually, some slightly milder air masses mix in by the middle of next week, but even here, cold air still pulls over the top of us, so it remains chilly. But once again, out towards day 10, we do try to pull that very cold air, starts to move our way, but once again, that high starts to break down, and again, the westerly flows start to push in. Won't have 100% success because there's still a lot of blocking around, but it's not as strong and it's not as succinct as we have been seeing earlier this week or into the weekend, or the last weekend, sorry. So, again, let's keep a very close eye on it, but these are the latest trends. That high, not quite as strong, and taking a very long time to allow that cold air to move in, which means it's a little bit longer for that cold air to move our way. And by the time it does, it starts to break down. Now, if you look at the latest ECMWF just come out, so you can see that easterly wind pushing in, very similar to the other runs, a really strong easterly by Friday. Wouldn't be surprised to see quite a bit of snow mixing in with this, snow showers that is. Beyond that, eventually a bit of milder air mixes in, you can see by early next week, but it remains chilly. Some cold air mass still mixing in, so I wouldn't be surprised again to see bits and bobs of snow. But towards day 10, very similar to the other runs, that high still to our northeast, and it's starting to pull very cold air into Eastern Europe. You can see these darker blues starting to head our way, but again, the high pressure starting to break down, the lows starting to break through. By the time the cold air heads our way, the westerlies look like they're going to try and take over once again. So it's all due to the fact that it's just, we've not got that much cold air to our east in the first place. And for that very cold air to move our way, it does take a very long time. It takes a good 3 to 5 days. So we'll have to wait and see how this does play out, but the positioning and orientation of the high pressure at the moment means that, it does take quite a long time for that cold air to come in, and the 3 main operational runs today do have at least a small milder period, perhaps a brief break through the westerlies before that cold air pushes in. We can see that on the latest ensembles. From the upper air temperatures, you can see very cold for the next kind of week, all the way up to kind of 10th, 11th of Feb. That's where the big uncertainty comes in. And beyond that, ensembles hover around average. Very few go very mild. Most are average, maybe slightly above average, and quite a few are below average, and some significantly below average. Those will be the ones that really pull in that easterly wind very quickly. A minority, maybe a quarter of the runs do that. But, not as overwhelming as we were seeing a couple of days ago. But regardless, still a lot of uncertainty, so we could just be seeing the models toying with the different ideas. But you can see a clear rise in the upper air temperatures around the 9th, 10th, 11th of Feb. However, we don't see the same at the 2 metre temperatures. There is a slow rise there into the middle to second half of Feb, but it's from 2 or 3 degrees to 5 or 6 degrees. Now, the reason for that is because, as we saw from those operational runs, even if we don't see very cold upper air temperatures moving, it's still an easterly or southeasterly flow. It's still cold at the surface. So even though we wouldn't see snow, and we wouldn't see very cold, bitterly cold conditions, ice days or anything like that, it would still feel really chilly. And you can see that further with the dew points here. Again, upper air temperatures rising in the longer term, but dew points stay around freezing and perhaps intensify around the 12th to 14th of Feb, which just shows you there's a very dry cold air mass coming in from the east, and that although those operational runs showed the westerlies trying to break through, very few runs actually have low pressure breaking through of the Atlantic, or we'd see those dew points widely 5 to 10 degrees. Only a few runs in the longer term are hitting that 5 or 6 degree mark. So we'll have to wait and see exactly how it does play out, but definitely at the moment, models perhaps backed off a very cold easterly, but are continuing to show a good 7 to 10 days of cold easterly winds with some snow and some wintry hazards mixing in, but nothing too extreme or disruptive. To be honest, it's exactly the same from the east into F ensembles. Again, very cold out towards the 10th, 11th of Feb, a good 5 degrees below average. Then we get back towards average and a lot of spread. Quite a few around the 0 degree mark, but still quite a few that go cold or very cold. Precipitation picks up, but not massively, indicating high pressure is still in control. And you see the 2 metre temperatures are still pretty chilly, getting up to maybe 6 or 7 in the longer term from the ensemble mean. So really not too much of a rise there, still below average, even when those upper air temperatures do start to rise. So it's going to be a very interesting watch the next few days. A bit of a wobble in the last 24 hours. And I'll be very intrigued to see if that continues over the next couple of days. Regardless, though, end of this week still looks like it's going to turn cold with some snow showers in place. And as I even suspect, it will intensify further than what the models are showing at the moment. So, as I said, we'll keep a very close eye, especially on this week, but also on that longer term prospects. But regardless of what happens, regardless of that very cold easterly does eventually arrive, the next week to 10 days, or even 2 weeks, does look like it's going to be persistently below average, persistently chilly, and yeah, probably not going to see all too much in the way of precipitation. When we do, there's quite a strong chance, especially inland, of seeing a bit of snow. So anyway, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.